Hey, everybody. Welcome to the Random Redshirt podcast. And who fought next to Seven of Nine in the Sankatse matches against the Pandari champion. He is none other than Chris. What's up, buddy?
Hello, dear friend. How are you? It's great to be here. Uh, it's great to see you. So many things going on. World Cup is going on.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's going great. I saw on Amazon Prime some armored MMA match that was there. I didn't even know that was a thing until I saw it. And I go, oh, well, that's a thing. Two
Yeah.
like guys in armor hitting each other. So, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Wow. We're in full swing of summer now. So
Yep.
beautiful days going. So that's
We
good.
are, at the time of the recording, we are 6 days away from America's 250th birthday. So that's a
250th
big deal,
birthday.
man.
Oh, you know what I learned? In one of my travels, and so I had no idea. And so I get learned these things and all the travels I learned these things of what it means to be an American. So the first country in the world to recognize the independence of the United States of America is Morocco.
Really?
Yeah.
How did that
And
happen?
that was amazing. So it Morocco allowed the free the free recognized and allowed the free transportation of United States ships through their waters and through their
Mm.
bay and gave them protection. And then uh, the country of Morocco and the United States has, I think the longest treaty of peace and partnership of all the treaties that the United States has. So that's actually the longest like peace treaty that the United States has. So that was amazing. And
Wow.
I learned that like in my travels there and was educated by the country, by Morocco.
Nice.
And so that's amazing, right?
That's fantastic, man. In case all of you
Yeah.
didn't know, Chris teaches history at the Starfleet Academy. So, in
I
case you're
do.
ever wondering,
I do. Yeah. Yeah.
yeah,
Amazing. And we
that's
have
really cool.
not, yeah, it is cool. Yeah. We have not watched Starfield Academy yet.
No, well, I watched the
Mm.
pilot.
You
You
watched the
haven't watched
pilot.
the pilot. Yeah, I watched the
No, it's
pilot.
fine.
That was enough for me.
Yeah.
I'm good. Uh, for those of you out there who like it, that's great. It just wasn't my thing. Wasn't my jam. So, I at least watched the pilot. I'll say that.
Yeah.
But our current spotlight series here in the Random Redshirt podcast, and we are going home to the station to D Space Nine. I'm excited. I'm always excited to talk to you, Chris, and to share the things we enjoy. But of course, when it comes to D Space Nine, it gets me even more excited than I already am. And we get to come home as we go. We move from next gen into DS9, and we're going to start taking a look at a few admirals and some of Starfleet's finest question mark that we've seen in D Space Nine episodes. Now, what's interesting about this one, when I was putting some of these things in this list, I was thinking to myself, I guess I misremembered because I was thinking Cal Hudson was a captain,
Mhm.
but he's not. He's actually lieutenant commander. So he's a little bit of an like on the edge as an outlier, sort
Mhm.
of the types of Starfleet officers that we've looked at thus far. However, in the episode, there's a line that Sisko says, I believe it's in part one, where he says, "We are the two ranking Starfleet officers along the Cardassian border," or something along those lines.
Yeah.
So to me, it kind of makes sense, right? Because obviously, Sisko has a huge role strategically as the commander of D Space Nine and all the importance the station holds. But now you have this other guy, Lieutenant Commander Cal Hudson, who him and Sisko are real close, and he is also another ranking officer in this part of the quadrant. And so to me, it kind of makes sense to talk about him. And this is a great episode, and a lot of philosophical questions can be had here.
Yeah. They're both the ranking officers. I think Commander Hudson is in charge of the colonies, from how I understood it.
Yeah.
And as I was thinking about this, I mean, this is a fantastic relationship between the both of them, but also like what a hard, difficult assignment they both got. Incredibly difficult.
Yeah.
I mean, this has to be one of the most difficult assignments in all of Starfleet, like in my opinion, to do this. Like after this is after the war with the Cardassians. This is after the peace treaty with the Cardassians, and then you assign these gentlemen to go like make sure it all works, right? And wow, that's I there's so many contemporary parallels that can be drawn from this episode. It was this two-parter was amazing. It's like I was watching it for I felt like the first time again since it had been
Mm,
a while since I saw it. So
yeah.
yeah.
That's how I felt with a lot of the TNG
Yeah.
episodes we had
Yeah.
watched. It was kind of the same way, right? Um, you're absolutely right, Chris. Unbelievably difficult assignments that both of them got. It makes you think too, though, that because they got these difficult assignments, they have to have had significant trust and confidence from the Starfleet brass to give
Yeah.
them these assignments. And that's going to come into play later when we talk about Cal and we start getting into these things, right, with Lieutenant Commander Hudson and his relationship with Sisko, and then kind of what types of responsibilities he had, and how that affects maybe our view of him
Yeah.
as we get towards the end of this. But if this is your first time, welcome to the Random Redshirt podcast. Be sure to go on Facebook, Instagram, Threads, your favorite podcast platform. You can find all of our episodes in an audio only format, and a majority of our episodes in a video format on our YouTube channel if you're listening on your favorite podcast platform. And that being said, Chris, we are jumping into Star Trek Deep Space Nine, Season 2, the episode The Maquis, Part 1 and 2. And the Maquis are first mentioned, I believe, in TNG, right? That's the first time we've
Yeah.
ever heard of the Maquis
Yeah.
before. And then they carry that into DS9, and even plays a massive role in Star Trek Voyager, because part of the crew of Star Trek Voyager are members of the Maquis that are taken on board the ship once all the stuff happens in the pilot. So the Maquis play a very critical role in three different Star Trek series in the 90s: TNG, DS9, and Voyager.
Yeah. They really do. You bring up a really great point about the Maquis because the members of the Maquis, as you get to learn who they are as people, you like them, you respect them. You go,
Yeah.
oh, these are good people. They really care for each other. So I I like how um, they really humanize the idea of the Maquis, and I think that was a really important part of a Voyager, he, a Voyager, but also a really important part of this two-parter episode, right? Of like how someone can become like a Maquis.
Yeah, agreed 100%. And it's not a like a membership thing, right? It's a more matter of you know, how you look at them, right? The perspective you have. So from Starfleet's perspective, they look at them as a terrorist organization,
Yeah.
right? Because of the things that they do. From the Maquis perspective, they look at themselves sort of as freedom fighters and fighting for their independence and fighting for their homes in this case, in this episode, fighting for their lives. And so it really depends on what angle you're taking. Very similar to the, I'm going to use a big word here, okay? Because this is not a
Yeah.
word I normally
So,
use. It's the juxtaposition
mm,
between the Cardassians and the Bajoran, right?
yeah.
In the Bajoran's eyes, they're freedom fighters. They're trying to fend off the Cardassians as part of the occupation and the persecution that they endured under the Cardassian reign for over 20
Mm.
years. The Cardassians look at them as terrorists.
Yeah,
So
absolutely.
very some very similar parallels between the Cardassians and the Bajorans versus the Cardassian or the Starfleet and the Maquis.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. I was thinking about a lot of different things in this episode. This also made me think about Captain Picard, and how he handled uh, the Maquis, on how he handled the Native American population that was on the planet, and like how he handled those orders from Admiral Nechayev. Also made me think about Star Trek Insurrection and Captain
Mm,
Picard, right? Because that was actually maybe like an opposite side. I was drawing parallels between Captain Picard and Commander Hudson,
yeah.
because you just slightly change things around, and you can see um, people in those different roles, perhaps even acting a little bit differently. So.
Yeah, agreed, 100%. So
Yeah.
let's jump into this two-part episode. We'll start with part one, story by Rick Berman, Michael Piller, Jerry Taylor, who is passed away, along with Michael Piller and James Crocker. Teleplay was by James Crocker and directed by David Livingston, who I think we said before, I think he holds the record for the most episodes
Oh,
directed of Star Trek.
yeah.
So that's pretty cool. But we start out on the state, a shot on the station of the Cardassian freighter, the Bach Nor, which is docked, and there's a human in a Starfleet uniform doing maintenance on a nearby wall panel to the Bach Nor, but he appears to be kind of doing it sneakily and tampering with some stuff. And then we cut over to Ops, where Jadzia is telling Major Kira about the Galamite Captain Baudet that she has a date with.
A date with, and he apparently has a transparent skull. So
Yes.
in which she can see the brain. So I really did enjoy this interplay between Dax and Kira because it was kind of cute where they're kind of trading their taste in men that they like to date. And
Yes.
so
I like how Kira was like, I've only got one life to live. I have to be a little bit pickier or something like that,
yeah,
right? Because she's like, I know you've lived a bunch of lives and you
yeah.
can do that.
Yeah, and Dax is like saying, "Well, Kira, you just care about how they look."
Yeah.
You know?
You're very superficial, Kira.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, apparently. So the freighter explodes. The Cardassian freighter like blows up upon
Yeah,
exit.
Rise is leaving. Like
Yeah,
I mean, it just barely gets undocked and it's just starting to pull away. And I mean, right near the pylon. They're lucky the pylon didn't, take some severe damage to it.
yeah. And so like as this unfolds, there's no survivors on the freighter. And and then they have to investigate, O'Brien and Dax and Kira, they're all participating in the investigation. But what really struck out to me about this as it unfolded was the amount of pressure Sisko was in because there were quite a few interactions where, um, as they're investigating, Sisko's calling O'Brien and saying, "What have you found out yet? Is it an accident? Is it not an accident? I need to tell our superiors something because they're breathing down
Yeah.
my neck."
Yeah.
And so that's where you really get the sense of like urgency there and um, how political this whole like circumstance is, right?
Big time.
Yeah. Yeah. So I thought, okay, I thought that was a really good touch that they had on it. And I liked that it was taking time for O'Brien to figure it out. He couldn't figure it out yet. Dax couldn't quite figure it out. But when they did finally figure it out, they're like, oh, it wasn't an explosion, it was an implosion,
Mm.
then and that was a big deal. Then it was not an accident. So
Yeah, and I think the reason they find that out is because there's traces of something called mercasium, which I think is the
yeah.
first time we've ever heard of this substance or whatever it is in Star Trek that they found in the debris. And what they find with that is this synthetic composite is used in shield generator construction by the Federation, and it's
Hmm.
not something that they share with anybody else. So
Yep.
that's where they think that, okay, well, Federation, maybe the Maquis are involved potentially, or something's awry here. It wasn't an accident. And obviously, from the political perspective, as you mentioned, Chris, you have a Cardassian freighter that explodes right as it's leaving D Space Nine, which is a Federation run station, albeit, the Bajorans have kind of taken it over, sort of, but the Federation runs it. And that poses a serious problem because you have this treaty, right? This peace treaty with the Cardassians and the Federation, and now you have a Cardassian craft
Yeah.
that's blown up on a Federation or right by a Federation run station.
Yeah. This is a very sophisticated like story and it feels very grounded in like a potential reality too,
Yes,
right?
yeah.
Now everyone's afraid of retaliatory strikes. Absolutely, because that is what would happen. You'd get some retaliatory strikes.
Hmm.
Um, and yeah, we get to see and we get to kind of learn how that all goes in this episode. So Lieutenant Commander Calvin Hudson like soon appears. And I loved his appearance. Like he comes in and at least for me, I really enjoyed his personality. I liked his uh, interactions with Dax
Yeah.
particular. I thought that was really great. Um, but you know, after these really pleasant introductions, then he's got to talk to Commander Sisko in private, talk about the situation.
Yeah, I love how when they go into Cisco's office, he goes, "That woman knows more about me than anyone, maybe even more than my wife, because of the fact that she was Curzon Dax, right?
Yeah,
Before that, and Curzon knew him. So yeah, that was great about the joke and the joke about his presence on the border and his assignment and everything like that was really wonderful. Um, the first time I think I ever saw Bernie Casey, the actor, was in the amazing, highly underrated comedy movie Spies Like Us with Dan Aykroyd and Chevy
oh,
Chase. He is like I think the lead guy, the lead trainer when Chevy Chase and Dan Aykroyd are going through their training before they are sent off into Russia as spies.
hmm.
So, or wherever it is they're sent, maybe it's the country along the border or something like that. It's been a while since I've watched that
It
movie,
was a
but
good movie. Yeah,
yeah, that's the first time I remember seeing him. And then when I watched DS9 for the first time, I go, oh, yeah, okay, I recognize this guy. I saw him in Spies Like Us. But Bernie Casey's done a lot of movies and things like that. So he's been around quite a bit. But the conversation that they have in his office is very important, right? Because Cal already is starting to show signs of sympathizing with the Maquis.
yeah,
This idea that the Cardassians won't retaliate, but that a response is going to happen. He doesn't trust the Cardassians. They're just the Maquis are trying to defend their home. And the big thing is how much he wholeheartedly disagrees with the treaty
yeah,
because the treaty took homes away from the Maquis. They were forced to leave because those planets ended up falling inside the Cardassian space. And I like how Cisco counters is like, yeah, well, there were Cardassians that had to give up their homes as well.
yeah,
So there's already this, I don't want to say tension, but there's already a little bit of this interplay back and forth where you can tell that, you know, Lieutenant Commander Cal Hudson may not be on the same wavelength as Cisco.
yeah. And it makes sense because he's close. He's obviously because of his assignment, he's much closer to the colonists, right? So he's developing these personal relationships like with the colonists and beginning to sympathize like with them. Um, and it's kind of parallel to the reaction that Captain Picard had when he was ordered to like move those Native American colonists from the planet.
Mhm.
You know, he in that assignment, he really sympathized with them, and then he started having like second thoughts and like doubts, and wanted to appeal to Admiral Nechayev to say, hey, maybe this isn't the right idea. So it's along those same wavelengths, right? I think that they they really they really start to sympathize with the colonists, and that completely makes sense. What I also really enjoyed is that in this conversation with Cisco and Hudson, we immediately see that there is a vast history, closeness, and connection with them. Like they've shared everything, right? They talk about their wives, and obviously there's tragedy with both of their wives that we learn that they had to endure. They talk about Jake, um, and then they're sharing that, but between each other, and then there's some levity too, because at the beginning they're even talking about Dax, because I can, Hudson's like, well, that's not like the Dax side, it's that's Jadzia's like not Curzon, and then he makes this play like with Cisco. He's like, you and Dax are not, kind of together, right?
Yeah.
And then he's like, Cisco's like, "What? No!" And that cracked me up because if we remember the mirror universe episodes later, there's like a more there's a romantic like engagement that Cisco has with Dax.
It's
So
almost like Cal is foreshadowing something, right?
foreshadowing, yeah, yeah,
Yeah, that I definitely think Cal was foreshadowing something, because we then see it later in the mirror universe. I'm glad you brought that up. Actually, that's a good point because there was a little something something that happened that maybe if the Prime Universe Dax had found out, she might be a little bit like, ooh.
yeah, right, yeah.
But you notice Cisco never brings it up. I think I don't think he wanted to. I think it'd have been a little bit too awkward if had he done that. So
Yeah, yeah, absolutely.
yeah, I will say what's interesting. Well, one of many things about this episode. Not only like you said earlier, the writing in this is fantastic because there's so much to it. Right, there's so much parallel. There's a lot of twists and turns. And if you were watching this for the first time, and maybe if you remember the first time you watched this episode, I don't think I remember my exact reaction, but
Hmm.
when you see Cal later as like the shocker to end part one,
Hmm.
um, I don't know, based on the way he kind of is sympathizing with the Maquis, that's super, super, surprising. But one of the things I found surprising in this episode is we see a Vulcan who we learn is part of the Maquis
Yeah,
and is kind of sort of a troublemaker and kind of sort of a terrorist, depending on how you look at her. And she arrives on the station meeting with somebody else in the promenade. And then she goes to Quark's to offer a business proposition. I mean, in typical Quark fashion, I love the interplay between Quark and this female Vulcan because it's absolutely hysterical. Sakona, I think's her name.
Sakona is her
Yeah,
name. That was great. It is a great subplot actually with
100%.
Sakona and Quark. And I love how Quark well he wants to wine and dine her and
Hmm.
and seduce her and
Yeah.
she's a beautiful Vulcan and and he goes through a lot of trouble to set up this dinner. And it's funny because she's going along with it all the way. She's like, okay, I respect your customs and I'll go through this. And um and it was funny when they finally got to they're having this wonderful dinner and we get into the rules of acquisition, which is wonderful. And the rules of acquisition come into very important uh play later, which we'll
Hmm.
get into later. But I like that. Quark's like, well, you never want to start a business transaction on an empty
Empty
stomach.
stomach. Yeah.
That is one of the rule. That is one of the rules. And she's
Yeah.
like, really? Yeah, okay. And then when she goes, well, I my business transaction is I would like guns. And
Photon
I would
torpedoes and all
like
this stuff.
photon torpedoes. And
Yeah.
the expression on Quark's face, he just goes, he's like, "You're a gun runner?" Or
Yeah.
like, "Your weapons?" Yeah, that was wonderful. That was great to see.
I mean, if you're a Vulcan, wouldn't you be one of the least likely people that people would expect suspect as doing something like gun running and terrorism and everything? I mean, of all the species that you would encounter, I feel like a Vulcan could get away with doing that, pretty sneakily and not having nearly as much suspicion cast on them just based on the fact of the reputation that their species holds, right? With
Agreed.
logic
Yeah.
and everything. So
Yeah.
it's a very much a nice kind of funny little, not funny, but a nice cool little quirk and twist that they have in the episode being
Yeah.
making it a Vulcan.
Yeah, it is. So I was assuming that maybe there were Vulcans on those colonies too, because they're all Federation citizens,
Yeah.
so they could be any Federation species that was there. So
True.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Now, uh we get to Cisco's quarters. And in typical fashion, Gul Dukat is shown up unsuspecting. No one knows he's coming. He sneaks on board a transport as an unregistered passenger and happens to crawl his way to the station where nobody sees the Cardassian. and is sitting there waiting for Sisko in his quarters. It, I know we've talked about doing this at one
Yeah.
point, and we probably will, about like the greatest Star Trek villains. Is Dukat has to be like top three, top five greatest Star Trek villains, right? I mean, he is just the Mark Alamo was just so stinking good as Gul Dukat. I mean, it really is. He brings this villainous presence when he shows up on screen, this larger than life character, and he does not disappoint in this episode either.
This was great to see how Cisco engaged with Ducat and how Cisco engaged with Hudson. You know,
Yeah,
on one hand you have him with Hudson, it's like it's his obvious like dear old friend, and Ducat is like his nemesis,
yeah.
arch nemesis. But in this episode, you I felt myself like liking Ducat. You
Mhm.
almost feel oh, he's very charming uh and big personality, and you like him. At least I did.
That's how we get you, Chris.
Yeah,
One episode you like him, the next episode you think he is the scourge of the Cardassians and everything. And I mean, I will always think of him as one of the greatest villains because he kills my favorite female in all of Star Trek, Jadzia
absolutely,
Dax.
absolutely.
Spoiler for those of you who have not watched the end of season six. It's an episode I will routinely skip when I do my watch through because I have a hard time watching that episode. But
Yeah.
anyways, yes. And I love Cisco's response. It's just this look where he turns around and he goes, you could just see on his face, he's like, "Oh, you again? Like, what are you doing here?" You know, this kind of
Mhm.
almost he's it's not like he's startled or necessarily surprised. It's just almost this look of disgust and anger that he's there. And what's also fascinating is that he immediately asks where Jake is,
Yeah.
and Ducat's offended by that.
Yeah. Yeah. And natural, right? I think you could see that as Cisco walked into his quarters, his first words were, "Hey, Jaco," and Jake wasn't there.
Yeah.
So he, as a parent, he immediately goes, "Oh," now he's all tingly. Spider sense goes off. He's like, "Oh, well, Ducat's here. Jake's not here.
Yeah.
Uh-oh, like what's wrong with Jake? Like where's Jake?" So
Well,
yeah.
and honestly, I mean, I think to this point, Ducat has earned a certain reputation where Cisco would that would be a thought,
Hmm.
right? Of okay, Ducat's here, Jake's not. He was obviously expecting Jake to be in the quarters at the time he arrived, so these two are not mutually exclusive necessarily in Cisco's mind.
Yeah.
And Ducat is very, very offended by that, and he's Captain or Commander. I'm offended that or whatever he says that
You wound
I
me. You
yeah you
wound
wound
me.
yeah you there you
Yeah.
go you wound me. Then thinking that I would ever hurt your son or something along those lines, right? Like I can't believe that you think I am capable of such things, right? And obviously Cisco does believe he's capable of that. And as an audience, I think we would have to probably agree with Cisco. He is
Yeah.
capable of heinous things. Even though later in the episode, I believe Ducat tries to defend Ducat. See, the thing is, Ducat knows what happened was wrong with the occupation, and Ducat is always defending himself by saying, "Well, it was the High Command, it was the Obsidian Order, it was all these other things that
Yeah.
made this really bad. It was actually me who." Didn't kill as many Bajorans. The Central not High Command. That's the Vulcan High Command. Central Command wanted to kill all the Bajorans, and I stopped that. So see, I'm not a bad guy. It's the other people. He's always doing that deflection of blame, where he's
Yeah.
trying to paint himself out to be this hero, when in
Yeah.
reality he's a slime ball.
Yeah. Yeah. He is. And that takes a certain, of course, um, type of personality, right? A very um deceptive and even psychopathic personality. The portrayal of Gul Dukat reminds me, I was thinking about this, it reminds me of Iago from Othello a
Mm.
little bit, a very deceptive and manipulative and can manipulate like the situation like that. So it just reminded me like a lot of that in his character. And he's just such, Gold Dukat is just very good about that, about doing that, right? And
Yeah.
yeah. Um
There's a
yeah.
lot of Shakespeare interwoven in Star
Yeah.
Trek. I mean, there really is. And I think you brought that up before in some other episodes we've talked about where there was some interplay with Shakespeare and also with the Odyssey as
Yeah.
well.
Yeah.
So,
There's a yeah, I mean Cisco and Ducat end up working together so much in these two episodes. Then like at the end of episode two, there's this quick exchange. This is where Cisco can't, Cisco's essentially letting um Cal leave, like escape.
yeah.
And of course this is against what Ducat wants because Ducat's like, no, don't let him go. And Ducat like looks at Cisco and he's like, I thought you were much stronger. I thought you were much stronger than that. And so,
Yeah.
yeah.
Well, and Cisco's curious as to why Ducat has shown up. I mean, obviously,
Yeah.
so this thing happens, right? There's an explosion of this Cardassian vessel, and all of a sudden there's Ducat. It's like, you came here as quick as you could, couldn't you? Like, but that being said, Ducat believes that it was renegade Starfleet officers who did this.
Yeah.
Not it wasn't an accident. It wasn't the Cardassians doing it to them and everything else, and that he wants to find the truth.
Hmm.
So in order to do that, they have to take out a runabout and head off to figure out what exactly has happened.
They do. And that runabout, I like that exchange in the runabout. Like Ducat says these things was like, I'm noticing that my side of the controls isn't illuminated and why is that? Like, what if there's an emergency
Yeah.
and don't you want me to help out? Cisco's like, no.
It's not the first time he's been locked out. There was an episode where him and Kira were in a runabout and she locks him out again. Like, there's a theme here. It's almost as if they don't trust him, you know?
Absolutely right. But he turns it around so well. He's like, you don't have to worry about like showing me your controls. Like
Yeah.
we're years ahead of your technology anyways.
Yeah.
Like why
Yeah.
I already know like
Typical
how to use your
Cardassian
controls.
gloating,
Yeah,
right? So,
gloating. Yeah, you're
yeah.
right. You're right. I
Yeah,
love
yeah.
that.
But he does know the layout of the weapons
Yeah.
systems because he's gonna get ready to he tries to go fire a photon torpedo at the Federation ship, and he's like, "Oh yeah, I already know the layout of this. You don't have to tell me." So yeah, but there is another question. Cisco asked him if he had heard about the Cardassian children undergoing mind training programs
Yeah.
from the age of 4. And another thing, so this is where there with the Cardassian government and the Cardassian society, it's run very similar to like communism and socialism, right? Where there is
Ah,
this state-sponsored, state-level kind of education, and he talks about how the Cardassian education is unparalleled, meaning they're smarter than everybody else, their children are smarter than everybody else, and all of that. And Cisco basically is like, well, that kind of takes out a lot of the fun of growing up. And Ducat says, well, education is power and joy is vulnerability.
yeah. I
So
was I I was thinking about the same thing as you just mentioned, yes, of communism and education
yeah,
and how that goes. Those words that Ducat says, like education is power, joy is vulnerability, spark so much like thought, makes us think
yeah,
like, oh, okay, like joy is vulnerability. Like why would you think that? Certainly yes, like education makes like an individual and makes a society more powerful the more educated they are, right? But then um I love that statement just because it's so controversial. Joy is vulnerability. It makes you think about that. Like, how do you grow up in a society like that, where that is ingrained like in the culture and ingrained in you, and you go joy is
Hmm.
vulnerability, and like how does that affect you as an individual and as a society? Very, very interesting.
Yeah, so does that mean that the Cardassian education, it's all about indoctrination? Is it actually education or is it indoctrination on the part of the government?
Hmm.
Right? So that's another question to be had there as well. And you also think of it too with the Cardassian government and this idea of not just education, but also the justice system. Because there's a conversation in that conversation, I believe, Ducat
Yeah,
mentions about the education system and about how, the trial, before they even go to trial, that they're already guilty. And I think Sisko says something effective. Well, then what's the whole point of it? And he's like, because the people demand it,
yeah,
right? So this idea of, socialist, communist, Marxism is even in there. I think the Cardassians as a whole kind of have different flavors and elements, maybe less of socialism, but more of communism and Marxism, right? And so the trial is just for show. They're already guilty, and then Cisco says something to the effect of, "Well, what happens if have they ever tried an innocent man?" And he goes, "Cardassians don't make mistakes." And I
yeah.
think Cisco goes, "I'll have to remember that for something for later." So there's a lot of those elements in the Cardassian government.
Yeah, that's what this episode is so sophisticated in that manner, because
Yeah,
there are a lot of those elements, and Gul Dukat makes several comments to the fact like, well, this doesn't, y- we don't do things like the Federation does things with your Federation ideals and Federation morality, and
yeah.
those that idea that the morality and ideals of the Federation uh inhibit the Federation and keep it back. And actually Odo says something similar to that in this episode too, when they're talking about security on the station, which was fascinating, right? So Odo's complaining because he's saying, "Hey, if you only allowed me to do like this would be a more secure station, right?
Hmm.
I'd have it much more secure. Give me a bunch of deputies or constables, um, and it'd be much more secure." And Kira says something to the fact like, "Well, it's just going to be like when the Cardassians occupied the station," and then Odo says it was safer back then, and he makes that statement, right?
But
And
Kira says, "Yeah,
yeah,
but for who?"
yeah.
Because
Uh,
not the Bajorans.
mm-hmm.
The Bajorans were slaves, right? They were processing deuterium. They were
Yeah,
working them. They were being worked to death, and some of the Bajoran women were used as basically, sex slaves for the Cardassian officers on the station,
yeah,
right? So, yeah,
yeah,
yeah, very, very not so pretty, scenario to be in. Uh, going back to, I'm glad you brought up the Odo thing
yeah,
because if you look at DS9 from beginning to end, Odo is never really given the full trust that I think he deserves. So Cisco does get to a point where he argues and fights vehemently for Odo because he trusts him as his chief of security. Starfleet, on the other hand, gets to a point where they don't because he's a changeling, right? And they think, well, if he's a changeling, we can't trust him because of the founders. And then Michael Eddington eventually kind of becomes like the Starfleet officer lead for the
yeah,
security, excuse me. When the Cardassians occupy, uh, known then as Terok Nor, Odo is given a short leash then because he's technically, Bajoran in the sense of, he wore the Bajoran clothing and all that kind of stuff and so forth. So Odo, I think has a valid point,
yeah,
right? Like he's handcuffed with by what he's allowed to do for a lot of the time that he is the chief of security. So I think he makes a great point, and I'm glad you brought that up.
yeah, yeah. Totally good point.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, as Cisco and Ducat are in the runabout, like they are. I mean, they're unveiling some things that are not making sense, right? So, I mean, they encounter this skirmish between apparently Federation and Cardassian ships. They're not understanding, hey, why is this skirmish happening in the first place? Dukat is not able to connect like with the Cardassian ships, even though he's saying, "Hey, I demand you guys answer me." You know,
Hmm.
that's not happening. Um, so that they're realizing that, hey, things are not what they seem, and I think that was really important. I think shortly after that, right, they actually arrive on one of the colonist planets, both Dukat
Correct.
and Cisco. Yeah,
Yeah, on
yeah,
Volon 3, I think's the name of it in the DMZ.
yeah,
Uh and that's where you see Golovec, who's having this debate
yeah,
with this very heated discussion with Cal Hudson, Lieutenant Commander Hudson, and the colony's council. I believe in that same scene or scenes in the runabout, uh that skirmish between the Cardassian ships and then the Federation ship, that scene after that happens, I believe, because Ducat's trying to get the Cardassians to stop, right?
yeah.
Initially, it looks like the Cardassians are going after a Federation vessel, and he's trying to get them to stop, and he's saying, "I this is Gul Dukat, a commander of the Second Order, and this is my, you know, what's it called? The like his number, right?
Yeah.
His
Security number.
security
Yeah.
code or security number, whatever it is, to get him to stop. They're not responding." And I believe there's a moment where Ducat mentions something to the effect of, if left alone, they're starting their own little war or something along those
Hmm.
lines, right? Where, they don't no involvement needed, they'll just start their own little war. Um, so again, Chris, and I'm glad you mentioned this earlier, this really does go back to how political this episode really is. And DS9 as a whole is super political. In
Hmm.
fact, it might be the most political show of all the Star Trek shows that we've seen in ever, basically, right? But this really goes back to that political nature of this two-part episode and the struggle and the battle between, okay, there was a treaty that was established between the Cardassians and the Federation. Each side, like in any negotiation, has to give and take,
Yeah.
right? You have to be willing to give things up if you want to get things. So the Federation and Cardassians made a treaty that was good for both sides, but they believed it was good for both their sides. But there was other people who didn't have a say or a vote in that. In this case, the Maquis had no say in that,
Yeah.
and maybe even some of the Cardassians along the border that had to leave their homes also didn't have a say in that.
Yeah. Yeah. And these two episodes are give us the personal view, right, of those individuals that had no say in it, which is great.
Yeah.
Um, I noticed like one of the individuals on the colony planet looked like Native American, and I wonder if that was, intentional
Hmm.
from the episode that Captain Picard was on, like regarding transporting the colonists.
Yeah, I'm not sure if that was intentional or not. Was that planet with the Native Americans, was their planet along the Cardassian border? I
Yeah,
don't
there
that
was
was mentioned. It was in the Cardassian border. I
in
I
the
don't remember
TNG
the episode
episode.
much. So
Yeah,
yeah, the TNG one. I don't remember that
yeah,
episode very much. So I mean, maybe it's kind of an Easter egg from that. I mean
yeah,
that could be. I have to go back and watch that episode because I don't remember that involving being along the Cardassian border. But that would make sense because I believe the peace treaty is first negotiated in TNG, right? Between the
yeah,
Cardassian and Federation peace treaty is negotiated there, and there is some issues. As a matter of fact, a guy we have mentioned previously, Captain Ben Maxwell, almost ended that treaty,
yeah,
right? We've mentioned him in a previous episode of our Spotlight series, and if you haven't seen that, be sure to go check that episode out. And that episode was called "The Wounded," that Captain Ben Maxwell appeared in. So be sure to go find that on our YouTube channel and your favorite podcast platform, and check out our discussion highlighting Captain Ben Maxwell.
I was thinking, I'm so glad you brought that up. I was thinking about Captain Maxwell a lot in this episode as well, because in that episode, The Wounded, there were Captain Picard and Captain Maxwell. These were two individuals, that didn't have history together. They didn't know each other, but they're both on opposite sides of the issue. And so,
Right.
but in here, It's you've got these individuals that know each other so well. You've got, Captain Sisko and Commander Hudson, and they're on opposite sides of the issue, but they also have this like relationship of closeness and friendship, really good friendship that they've had like over these years. So I was really thinking about that like a lot because this is like a twist on the same kind of framework.
I agreed 100%. And that scene where Ducat and Cisco first enter the room on Volon 3 is
Hmm.
pretty important, right? Because they're talking about the incidents being described with the Cardassian freighter that's blown up, the Bachnor, and you get a confession. And Golovec has this guy named William Patrick Samuels on record saying
Yeah.
that he confesses to the incident. But then he says, "Well, yeah, but then Samuels committed suicide shortly after giving it, and that doesn't seem right. It doesn't
No.
sit right in this given scenario." And then you have another colonist who also is very important in the episode, named Amoros, who jumps after Golovec because he's like he can't believe it, right? William Patrick Samuels isn't the kind of guy to do this and everything else, and so clearly uh, Amoros believes that this was staged and this was all propaganda on the part of the Cardassians to get them to make it seem like the Maquis are really the ones doing this.
Yeah. Yeah.
So,
Yep. All all layers of deceit along this
mhm.
whole thing.
There's a lot of deceit. The deception level is very high in this episode. A lot of back and forth. Both sides are accusing the other side of, doing this thing that is, sabotage and blowing up a freighter and killing all these people on board the ship. And so
Yeah.
there's a lot of at the up to this point in the episode, there's a lot of unknown. There's a lot of investigating that still has to be figured out. A lot of people are covering themselves and maybe lying or maybe they're not lying. And so there's a lot of twists still to come.
Yeah. There are twists, so shortly after this episode with Samuels, we get more conversation between Cisco and Hudson talking about what happened, right?
Yeah.
And Hudson is opening up more a little bit now. He's saying he's sharing more of his sympathy with the colonists. He's also saying, yeah, Samuels, maybe Samuels um did do this, but the Cardassians have to be hiding something, right? He wouldn't have done it without good reason.
Yeah.
Um, and Cisco's saying, well, if he we can start if the Cardassians are hiding something, if they are smuggling weapons, then we can take this up to the highest level. We can get the Federation leaders involved to take care of it. And and then you get the sense, and I could totally see how this would happen in reality. But Hudson's like, he scoffs at it. It's like, they're not going to do anything. They've abandoned us. They're not going to do anything.
Yeah.
Starfleet has abandoned these people. And so you get more and more insight on this mind space that Hudson is in. And I could totally see that mind space. I mean, just coming from that first assignment, he's assigned to these colonists.
That's tough.
Yeah.
I mean, you are being the Federation representative in this area, right? In this case of Cal, that's what his role is. He's assigned as this attaché to the Cardassian border
Hmm.
and with the Maquis. And so it's a little bit of that, right? Like the more he's around him, the more he sympathizes with him, given the situation they're in, and given the fact that the Federation has abandoned them, like he said, and this isn't the first time though. And we'll, if I remember, I'll ask this question again at the end. So one of the questions I have, having watched this episode and what came out of it, was or the two parts. And like I said, we can go back at the end and actually answer it. Is Cal in the wrong here, or is he right? And has the Federation made a grave misstep by
Hmm.
abandoning their own citizens?
Hmm.
Right. And so that's kind of the one of the philosophical questions I think in this scenario that we should answer, or someone can answer. So this is a very interesting scene because you have this very serious part where Cal is again continuing to defend the Maquis and why they should be doing what they're doing and defending themselves, and the Federation's abandoned them and everything. And then he's like, "Yeah, and you remember when when we hung out and our wives were hanging
Yeah.
out at the Mazurka Festival on New Berlin, and I'm pretty sure New Berlin's on the moon." Right. I think that was
Yeah.
mentioned in First Contact as one of the places that you can see on a clear day, like they could. But I'm pretty sure New Berlin is a moon
Yeah.
location. So they have that Mazurka festival, and Cisco is wondering, is something bigger going on here? But Hudson says, well, I'm not really aware. That's to me, I think, the first lie that we realize down the road that Cal has really said right to his face, to
Yeah.
Cisco's face, right?
Yeah,
Oh,
that is.
I'm not aware of anything bigger going on. You sure about that, Cal? I mean, we don't, as an audience, if you're watching for the first time, we don't know, right? But then you learn later that yeah, something is, and
Yeah.
Cal's at the forefront of that.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Um, what I also I think it was in part one of this, but there's some key interactions with Cisco and Major Kira too, regarding like
Right at the very end of the episode. Yep.
yeah, yeah,
Hmm.
yeah. Uh, because from Cisco's perspective, he's like, well, man, there's this treaty, and those colonists they chose to live there, right? They chose to live there. It's like uh, he's angry. You could really kind of sense like how frustrated he is. Um, but Kira says, well, I didn't choose to be under occupation by the Cardassians, and then I had to fight, and Kira's like so sympathetic. She's completely sympathetic with the colonists right there.
Yeah.
And and this is so Cisco's actually his his number one officer on the station, plus his close friend. They're both sympathetic to the colonists, right? And here's Cisco in this position. He's like, he's got Ducat telling him one thing, and then he's trying to follow the orders from Admiral Nechayev. Like,
Yeah.
in what a hard position that is to be in. And Admiral Chayev is saying, "Hey, those Maquis, they're Federation citizens. I'm sure they can listen to reason. Like, talk to them." And Cisco's like, "I have talked to them.
Yeah.
No.
Yeah. On one hand, he's got Nechayev, our favorite admiral,
Yeah,
in one ear, right? Saying, you need to get these people out of here. You need to convince them to relocate. And Picard in Insurrection has told us many times forced relocation has never actually worked well, right?
yeah,
So
yeah,
that kind of plays back to that. And then the other ear you have, like you said, Major Kira and his good friend Cal Hudson, who are telling him, hey, no, the Maquis have every right to this. This is their home, their homes, I should say,
yeah,
and they've been abandoned and everything else. So Cisco's stuck in the middle. And by the way, if you look across all of DS9 from beginning to end, Cisco gets consistently stuck between a rock and a hard place all the
mm-hmm,
time. He's
mm-hmm,
constantly stuck in the middle between two sides. And that's one of the things I like about Cisco is now he's not Cisco is not the diplomat that Picard is. We know that, right? Cisco's the kind of guy that'll go flying into something, firing phasers and torpedoes. But he's been in a lot of scenarios throughout his career while on DS9 where he has had to try to keep the peace or he's had to try to stop things from happening. And he's stuck in between two sides that cannot seem to come to an agreement. So he has a different way of doing it, but he has a lot of diplomatic situations. And this is another one of those,
yeah,
right? Where he is trying to prevent a war.
yeah, yeah. Tough spot.
Yeah.
Meanwhile, through this, like Ducat is essentially like taken hostage. Hostage, maybe that's the right word, but
Yeah.
they get him. They get,
Yeah, they
yeah,
absolutely do. What's
yeah.
interesting is that Ducat was fairly easy to take. You'd think like a guy who, you know, had done everything he's done, and this is gold Ducat, him and his big ego, he wouldn't have been so fooled,
Yeah,
but he was.
yeah.
and that's why, uh, Amorous and the other um, Maquis take him take him hostage, take him prisoner, which is
That's right.
interesting. I do, Chris, really quickly. I want to go back
Yeah.
to that what you mentioned about the discussion on wasn't really a discussion. It was more like very heated debate between
Yeah.
Cisco and Kira
Yeah.
because that's a very important moment I think in this episode. Kira makes a very important statement to Cisco that I think kind of resonates a little bit. And Cisco goes, "Oh yeah, she's got a point." And that is when she says, "I know what it was like to live with the Cardassians. We lived under them for 26 years or something along those lines." She know if anybody that Cisco knows what it's like for the Maquis right now to going through all this, it's Kira,
Yeah.
right? And the occupation and all the, I mean, the other Bajorans too, right? But in the talking about main characters here, Kira knows as well as anybody. And I think she had mentioned something along the lines of since she was a certain age. And we know that Kira became a quote unquote freedom fighter or a terrorist in the eyes of the Cardassians, fairly young. I'm not as a child, but at a fairly young age, and fought against them for so long. So if anybody knows what it's like to live under the thumb of the Cardassians, it's going to be her. And that moment I think was real important for Kira to express that to Cisco and say, "Look, I know what this is like. I've been there, done that, got the T-shirt." So I'm glad you mentioned that scene because very pivotal scene I think in part one.
It is important. Yeah, because um she's observing, she's detached, she's got detached perspective too. So she's observing how the Federation is treating these colonists. Like she's questioning why won't the Federation support and defend these colonists? If you won't defend them, then of course they completely have the right to defend themselves.
Yeah.
And and she's coming from this, she's a Bajoran. And and when you think about Bajoran and then their relationship in history with the Federation, Federation kind of stood idly by when the Japan when Bajorans were suffering
Yeah.
under Cardassian like occupation
Yep.
because the Federation, either they didn't want to deal with it at the time, they couldn't engage it at the time, but they just stood idly by, right? And she knows that, but Bajorans know that, right? So it's
Yeah.
it's like on the one hand you have this Federation which is an organization that has these ideals, um, and on the surface talks about, these ideals, but um, that's probably not how the Bajorans feel about it, right? They kind of feel like, why didn't you help us when we really, really needed help? You're here now, but like, couldn't you have helped us like 5 years ago?
Yeah.
And same with the colonists, right? She's observing this kind of this how the Federation is treating these colonists. You hear from no, I don't think Nechayev says that about the colonists, but she says it about the Maquis. She says the Maquis are just a bunch of hotshots that should not be doing what they're doing, right?
Agreed.
And
Yep.
yeah, and the colonists just they need to they sympathize, we can sympathize with the colonists, but they need to move. They need to like either not attack or like move to where they need to move.
Let me throw something out here, Chris, and let
Yeah.
me let me see what you think about this, whether you agree or not. Okay, so Kira's wondering why couldn't the Federation have, helped out sooner? Yeah, they're here now, but now they're not helping the Maquis. They're not looking out for them. The Federation and Starfleet, the reason they didn't help out sooner, I think, this is my own personal opinion,
Mm-hmm.
is because Bajor was not of strategic importance enough yet. They came and helped out with the whole station and all that kind of stuff because the wormhole became the most strategic point in the Alpha Quadrant. That becomes a thing very early on in the show. You realize that that the Federation understands the importance of Bajor and the location and near the wormhole and everything else. The Federation as a whole, I think, is painted sometimes as this perfect organization that cares deeply and they're, seek out new life and new civilization, blah, blah. But we see many times in different episodes of Star Trek, maybe not necessarily the ones that Gene was alive, but maybe after,
Hmm.
that while, yes, it's more of a utopian future from a humanity's perspective, from a human perspective on what they did to kind of rise himself out of the ashes of World War III and come together and make, the Federation. Um, but it's not. The Federation still is going to do what's best for the Federation and its own interests. I mean, after all, it has a secret organization called Section 31. Obviously, it's not officially, you know, a thing, but the Federation's going to do what the Federation's going to do. And it's going to do it based on its own interests, not because it's necessarily the right thing to do or because it's trying to end suffering or stop the suffering of certain peoples on certain planets. So I want to get your weigh in on that. You think if you agree or not, or if I'm way out in left field and maybe I've misinterpreted Star Trek episodes all these years? It's possible.
Actually, I agree completely with what
Okay.
you're thinking. Yeah. Yeah, I think the wormhole is there. All of a sudden, yeah, there's this big strategic importance with the Federation being there for the wormhole because now it's access to the Gamma Quadrant.
Yeah.
Completely, completely agree. And I
And,
mean, yeah,
yeah.
yeah,
Well, and the Federation right now in this two-part episode, right? The Federation is not pouring resources in to help the Maquis and protect its citizens and do all of this. But look a little, this is only in season two, right? So look a little bit later in the show when the Dominion start becoming a thing. Guess what the Federation does? Oh boy, it'll send resources left and right if needed
yeah,
to guard the wormhole and protect the strategic importance of Deep Space Nine and Bajor and everything that comes along with that, with access to the Gamma Quadrant and protection of the Alpha Quadrant.
yeah,
So that's where the Federation goes. Well, this is a major hub. It's a huge it's of huge strategic importance.
yeah,
Therefore, now we care.
yeah, yeah. And that's some of the brilliance of DS9, right? And tying it into this.
Yeah,
Not only they're talking about peace treaties, but occupations and relocating colonists and terrorist groups. And this is just all you can pull these pages from like world history because all of
yeah,
this like comes from world history and how, how occupied nations and citizens of occupied nations like react
right.
like when this happens. So,
Yeah,
yeah.
agreed.
Yeah.
So Cisco and the other crew find out that Ducat's been taken, and they run off in a runabout to find out where they've gone. The Klingons come through for the win because they let them know where the freighter's location is. So Klingons coming through for the win. They're there. They're helping out, and they're able to find the planet that I'm sorry, the Class M asteroid
Mm, yeah.
where which is interesting to say a Class M asteroid. Usually you don't think of asteroids as habitable, right? They're just big hunks
Yeah.
of rock, but in the Star Trek universe, apparently there's a Class M asteroid. So they beam down and they are surrounded by armed members of the Maquis in this forest-looking thing. And now we get the dun 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 suspenseful reveal of Cal Hudson out of uniform.
Out of uniform.
And this is where Cisco realizes, oh no, Cal is part of this thing, which I'm sure, not that necessarily, I wouldn't necessarily say Cisco was 100% caught off guard, but certainly in his mind, he's probably thinking, I'm hoping that Cal is not part of this, right? Like I'm hoping
Yeah.
Cal is not supporting the Maquis against the Cardassian in violation of the treaty the Federation signed with them. So very interesting. Um, yeah.
What
So
I
that's the end of
like,
part
yeah,
one.
yeah, into part one. And as we go into like part two, what I like about that, because you said it is important, Hudson now out of uniform, because the uniform
Yes.
actually becomes a symbol in
Yeah. At
part
the
two.
beginning of part two. Yeah.
Yeah, part two. And Sisko retains his uniform, right? And Sisko's like urging Hudson to say, I have a uniform. It's here waiting for you. Whenever you want to come back, we can forget about this whole mess. Like it's not only it's a physical symbol and like a metaphorical like symbol too. Right. So I just that was wonderful to see.
This is the first taste that Cisco gets of someone he's close to or someone he trusts betraying the uniform.
Hmm.
He gets it again when Michael Eddington does it to him. But Michael Eddington really gets it. And I wonder if Cisco carries some of the anger and frustration
Yes.
of this with Cal
Yes.
into the entire scenario with Eddington, because the chase and everything involved with Eddington spans multiple episodes where he's trying to find. And Eddington also is abandoning the uniform for the Maquis cause.
I completely agree with you there. I thought it was brilliant, Zach. I mean, I think that I think he carries that because Eddington is
I
like
think
when
so
you think
too.
of yeah, Eddington is like much more. I mean, he does not know Eddington personally like he
No,
knows Hudson, right?
no.
So, like I would think he could be much more objective with Eddington, but he's not. He takes it like it is so personal
Yeah.
when he
And,
takes it with Eddington. Yeah.
part of it too is I think with Cisco. So this guy Eddington, right? He comes in and he's been basically given chief of security for Starfleet personnel in the station. So he's been given a very prominent role. He's been left behind on the station to run things and take care of things. And Cisco doesn't see it coming at all.
Hmm.
And like I said, I think some of the lingeringness, it's not a word, but I'm using it anyways, the lingeringness of the Cal Hudson incident as a good dear friend of his lingers into the Eddington thing. And that's why it becomes even more personal because now Cisco's been duped again.
Yeah.
And oh, by the way, he's been duped again for someone running off to support the Maquis cause.
Yeah.
So it's almost like the Eddington's reopening old wounds that he experienced in this situation with Cal.
Yeah, yeah, it totally is. Because I mean, he lets Cal go like at the end of this
Yes.
episode too, right? He can't do anything. He's not going to do anything to his dear friend. He just as disappointed and angry as he can.
Yeah.
He's got to let him go. And
And we,
yeah,
yeah, no, go ahead.
yeah. He even says to Ducat, he says he's a good man,
Yeah.
you know. So when he lets him go,
Yeah. Uh, and we learn in a later, I think it's in a later episode. I don't remember hearing it in this one. In a later episode, that he finds out his buddy Cal was killed in a skirmish with the
mm,
Cardassians, I believe, and that upsets Cisco, because Cisco let him go, right? But that it just you could tell it pains Cisco when he finds that out because he knows the kind of man Cal was before everything started,
yeah,
and obviously he's lost a dear friend.
yeah,
So, but okay, let's roll into part two. So, what I found interesting was the stories by Rick Berman, Michael Piller, Jerry Taylor, and now Ira Stephen Bear. This is
uh,
before Ira Stephen Bear takes over as a showrunner. I think he takes over as a showrunner. I want to say in season 3 or season 4, somewhere along those lines. I know it, no later than season 4. So this is before Ira Stephen Bear has been kind of given the keys to DS9 because another show called Voyager is also happening, and Rick Berman and Michael Piller are kind of overseeing that as well.
yeah,
The teleplay was by Ira Stephen Bear, and unlike part one, directed by David Livingston, part two is directed by a director named Corey Allen. And we see part two pick up right where obviously part one leaves off, where they're surrounded by the Maquis and Cal. And then the whole uniform thing comes into this, right? And I think Cal says something to the effect of, the uniform felt a little tight recently, which is like
yeah.
like you mentioned. I'm glad you said it. The metaphorical and the physical aspect of what's going on.
Yeah. And then they talk about their graduation day, like at the
Mm,
academy, right?
yep.
What their aspirations um were. They wanted to be captains by the age of 30 and like admirals by 40. But, you know, Hudson says, well, now I've found like a better cause, like essentially. He's
Yeah.
found something else.
Okay. in the real world,
Hmm.
making captain, which would be the equivalent of like a full bird colonel, is by 30 is just not possible. And making admiral by 40, no, that's not going to happen. So in Starfleet, clearly there's this fast track option that you can really make these high ranks at a very young age, but not in the real world, unfortunately.
Yeah. Well, there was it was the aspirations of them like just graduating from the academy. So
Yeah, I
they,
think the
yeah.
yeah,
And
yeah, they're
Kirk was the only youngest captain I think that could. I think Kirk was the youngest, if I
yeah.
recall that. Yeah.
Now, maybe way back in the day, like in the Civil War and stuff, you had young people who they were promoted to full bird colonel and general in like their 20s and
Hmm.
30s. But that was the wartime, right? And that was a different scenario. That wasn't the common practice
Yeah.
necessarily. So, yeah, definitely high aspirations for Cal and Cisco, which is great, but a little bit unrealistic in our current timeline.
Yeah. Yeah. That is.
But
S-
I do like that you pointed that out. That he found a new cause, and that's the Maquis, right? That he had gotten to a point where he realized I can't turn my back on these people, and he obviously believes that the Federation has betrayed them and left them out, left them out to dry. And it wouldn't be the first time the Federation's done that either, right? The Federation with relocations. I mean, look at in Star Trek
Mhm.
Insurrection. They
Hmm.
want to remove the people, the Baku, who, yes, according to Admiral Dougherty, were not indigenous to that planet, but that's just an excuse for you to go through and pillage and raid their home. So the Federation doesn't exactly have a great track record when it comes to this kind of stuff, and this situation is no different.
Yeah. Yeah. This has so many like ethical dilemmas like in this situation. This is what I love. I don't know that you can say any which way is more right than the other way. Like
Yeah.
from both perspectives, I think you can see the truth on like both sides, why each side like has that certain conviction, and you can hold them both in your mind, Very,
It's
yeah.
Yeah, when we get to the end of this episode here and we talk about Starfleet's finest and whether Lieutenant Commander Cal Hudson is one of them, this is going to be tough. It's going to be real hard to. I don't know if I have an answer yet, but we'll
I
keep.
should, yeah, I don't have an answer.
I
Yeah.
don't know that I do either yet, but maybe
Yeah.
by the end of this I will. But you know the Maquis, according to Cal, the Maquis' highest priority is peace, but they believe there's they want peace, but they believe that they do have to retaliate to what's happened. They can't just let things happen and then try to get peace, right? They're not mutually exclusive in this
Yeah.
case. And Cisco makes a great point that the Maquis are looking for revenge. They're not looking for peace. And they get in this kind of game of semantics here, right? But Cal's like, well, I prefer to call it retaliation.
Retaliation.
Well, I mean, you can call
Yeah.
it whatever you want. It's still it's kind of you can say call revenge or retaliation. I mean, in this case, it's kind of the same thing, right?
Yeah. Yeah. Now this is fascinating. This
Yeah,
is fascinating. Yeah. Nechayev, she's checking out on like what's the status of everything? What's going
yeah,
on?
yeah. Well, you know, Cal and his Maquis. I mean, they stun
Yeah.
the away team with Cisco. And I like what Cal says, like, well, we better leave when we get out of here. And they wake up, they're going to be real angry or upset or something like that. So now Cisco has to leave. When they wake up, they have to now leave kind of with their tail between their legs and go back to DS9. And then what happens right away now? Cisco's got to answer to another admiral.
Yeah. She's got to answer to him. And she's wondering what's going on. She refers to the Maquis. I like this part where she says, "Yeah, they're just a bunch of irresponsible, like hotheads."
Yeah.
And she's saying, "Cisco, talk to them." And then what I really like, and she goes, "Well, what's Commander Hudson's like evaluation of the situation?" And you see the look on Cisco's face, and he's like, "I'm gonna have to ask him."
because
I
Starfleet
know.
doesn't know yet.
Yeah, Starfleet doesn't know.
That's a big thing, right? Because there's a scene a little bit later in part two where Cisco, that's the scene where Cisco's on the runabout and they're shooting and fighting, right?
Yeah.
And Cisco's saying, "Hey, I'll just stop now. I'll give you this chance. I have, I haven't told Starfleet or whatever, and they don't know, and so you could tell because this is a close friend of Cisco's. He is giving Cal every opportunity possible to get out of this situation and to stop, and chance after chance after chance, and unfortunately, Cal is just gone. I mean, he's into it and he's not coming back.
Yeah. Yeah, I know. I mean, he even, yeah, you're right. Cisco is imploring for Cal to get back. I mean, I remember with Amaros, he says, "Hey, I'm not going to hurt you. I'm going to let you go, but I want you to you know, tell Hudson like it's okay. He can come back.
Yeah,
The uniform's waiting for him."
yeah,
Yeah.
that's a really important line I think in the whole episode. The where he says the uniform's waiting for him,
Yeah.
right? Because that metaphorical and physical representation of the uniform at the beginning of part two, like you had mentioned, rears its head again, right? Because Cisco's held on to his uniform for him.
Yeah.
So that's really, really important as well. I do find so we love Admiral Nechayev. She's our favorite admiral,
Hmm.
and but I find that Nechayev in this case represents the tone deafness of the Federation. Instead of
Hmm.
instead of Nechayev walking into Cisco's office and saying, "Okay, give me a report, give me an update. What's going on? Have you talked to Lieutenant Commander Hudson? Like, what's the situation? Like, brief me, let me know." And then listening as to what's happening, listening to what they have seen and heard. It's just they're a bunch of irresponsible hotheads. You need to talk to them, get them under control because the whole tone of the Federation, we need to get them off these planets. It's these are the Cardassians. It's part of the agreed upon treaty. You need to get them, convince them to leave. Complete tone deaf. Admiral Nechayev, unfortunately, in this case, is representing that tone deafness of the
Of the
Federation.
Federation. Yeah. Yeah, I can see that. Um, that episode of TNG with the Native Americans, so she's in that episode at the beginning too,
Yeah.
and
That's one of her earliest episodes, I think, right?
yeah,
Or no, wait, man, hang on a second.
not the earliest one,
No, her
but
earliest episode is the first episode she's in is that Iborg, not Iborg. Yeah, Iborg with
Hugh with
the
Hugh,
first one. I think the Hugh episode's the
or
first one she appears. Yeah, Iborg is Hugh. Yeah.
yeah,
Um,
yeah.
I want to say that's the first one, but I'd have to go back and look. Anyway, sorry, I didn't mean to
No, no, it's all good.
sidebar
Yeah,
that.
I remember the one with the relocating the colonists, the Native
That's later
American
in the show,
colonists.
right? Like
Yeah, yeah, and Picard had tried to make her the special food. He had that made for her to.
that's
That
right.
was good.
Yeah.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
uh, like she says a few things like in that episode, like she's very matter of fact. She's like, your orders are, Picard, to like have these colonists transported and removed, and by whatever means necessary. And he's like, what do you mean? She says, by whatever means necessary.
Yeah.
And as Picard was like saying, well, he's pushing back. He's like, but Admiral, what about this? What about this? What about that? And she's like, I know, and I've tried, and I've appealed, and I've tried many times. So you get the sense in that TNG episode that she has tried, and she kind of had a little bit of understanding and was trying to appeal to to the Federation, but was like unsuccessful. But like her tone with Cisco here is yeah, like maybe a little bit of like frustration too. Like, hey, this stuff's got to end. We got to get past this. This is, you know, this can't happen. We got to have these Maquis stop. So both frustration and a little bit of tone deaf, like just like you're saying, and they're like, let's get on with it. Get on with the treaty.
Yeah. I still thought Picard and Nechayev would have been an interesting little relationship romance to explore. I mean, if Cisco's going to have a fling with the piano playing botanist or scientist, whatever she was in that one episode, with all the interactions him and it would have been funny to see them have gone from this like complete the just spitting fumes at each other, anger, hating each other kind of thing, to all of a sudden they kiss in another episode. It would have been That'd have been kind of a neat. I know Natalia has mentioned that before about the idea of that she wished they would have explored something between the two of them, because by the end of TNG they had kind of become I'm gonna say friends, but at least respected each other and
Yeah.
had a pretty decent you know professional relationship. But had been kind of even one episode, even if right as she's leaving, he gives her a kiss. I don't know. Anyways,
We can always
um,
write some fan fiction. We'll do like
that
a
is
fan
true.
fiction.
That
Yeah.
is true.
Yeah.
Okay, so we also see that Leggett Parn, Leggett is above a goal in the rank order structure of Cardassians. That Leggett Parn has arrived on the station, and that yeah, that he's
Yeah.
arrived, and I believe Cisco's gonna go meet up with him and greet him. And then Odo says, "Hey, I've caught another one of these accomplices, one of the people that was working with the Vulcan."
Ah, yeah, yeah, yeah. And when I like that they bring in the Legate, because now the depths of conspiracy get even like deeper,
Yeah,
right?
I would say it's the Cardassian deep state, right? To coin a phrase from our time,
Oh,
this is the
yeah.
deep state of the Cardassian. Now, some people say, "Well, no, I mean, the Obsidian Order is the deep state." Well,
Mhm.
no, the Obsidian Order is pretty out in the open. I mean, they do some shadowy stuff, but they're out in the open. Everybody knows they exist. They know the Obsidian Order pretty much controls a lot of the government. They know they pretty much spy on their citizens and watch everything they do and everything they eat and blah 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 and so forth. But to me, this is like going into the deep state within the government of the Cardassian Empire.
Yeah, yeah, it is. And I think he's saying that the Legate is essentially saying, yeah, well, this is all Gul Dukat's fault, and they were like acting under Gul Dukat's orders, and now he's captured, and yeah, it's okay. You can leave him captured. It's okay if they execute him because
This isn't the last time that Gul Dukat is used as basically a sacrificial lamb by the Cardassian government, right? I
yeah,
mean, for someone who has pretty much, and this isn't me defending Dukat, but like for someone who's pretty much devoted his entire life to serving the Cardassian Empire and everything else and so forth, he doesn't have I mean, he's been given a lot of responsibilities here and there, but he doesn't have the best reputation. Even he mentioned something about how, I guess my relationship with with the Central Command has soured a bit or something like that, right? At one point in the episode,
deteriorated. Yeah,
deteriorated.
deteriorated.
Yeah,
Yeah,
it deteriorated.
yeah.
Yeah, exactly. So I find it funny maybe not funny is not the right word, but highly entertaining that they're like, yeah, if they kill him, we don't care.
I
Basically,
know, right? Yeah.
it's kind of funny. I will say though, we also see when Cisco arrives in the security office. And in a holding cell is one of the Vulcan's accomplices. And of course, it happens to be none
Oh,
other
yeah, yeah,
than
yeah.
Quark.
Yeah,
And
that's right.
that whole scene is hysterical.
Yeah. And when they're trying to understand, like, well, Quark, like, what were you like selling them? And Quark's like, oh, this, and photon torpedoes. Like, what? Photon torpedoes? Like,
Yeah. You know, Quark Quark seems to do this a lot where he will start out where he will like avoid the question, he will
yeah.
evade whatever the discussion is, but then he eventually comes clean, right? It's like and this is one of many reasons why I love Quark, because Quark tries so hard to be a uh true Ferengi, right? He tries so hard to be like just the Ferengi of Ferengis, but then you also see him on the other side. He's got a human conscience or some type of conscience, right? That constantly makes him go, okay, well, I'm not going to make the profit I wanted. So here you go. Like, for example, the episode where he's working with his cousin Gayla to sell the weapons on the station, but
Yeah.
they're just using the holodeck to do it, or the holosuites. And then he eventually comes clean, and then he ends up selling out both sides, and he has his conscience because he doesn't want millions of lives millions of deaths on his hand. So that's what I think I love about Quark. Quark is actually a much more complicated character than I think a lot of people realize. They just think of him as this goofy Ferengi bartender, but he's actually very complicated. So he does his typical song and dance at the beginning, but then he eventually reveals
Yeah.
everything.
Yeah. And actually, like, can we, yeah, it's okay to talk about Quark more because I think,
Yes, please.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. I
Always love
think,
talking about Quark.
yeah, this subplot with Quark is like a key subplot in these two-part episodes and his relationship with Sakona.
Yeah.
Because in the background we have this this peace treaty, this huge peace treaty, and you have the Maquis and the terrorism, and you have everyone like, Maquis saying, "Hey, we want peace," but you just got this terrible situation with the Maquis and the Cardassians in this demilitarized zone. And so Quark has this conversation with Sakona, because Sakona's like, well, we're right, of course we're completely right,
Yeah.
and then he starts appealing to her logic and saying, well, I'll tell you why you're wrong, and it's going to be logical. And he brings in the rules of acquisition, right? And this was fascinating because that to me, this conversation kind of puts the entire two-part episode in this broad kind of context, this broad objective on like why it makes sense, why the Federation and Cardassian peace treaty like makes sense, because he starts talking about the price of peace, right?
Hmm.
Essentially. And he's saying, well, if the Maquis really want peace, you're not going to get peace by this continued fighting. It's just going to get worse. It's just going to get worse, and it's just going to worse. Now is the time peace is the cheapest. It is the cheapest, right? He puts it in these
Yeah.
Cardassian ways.
Yep.
The price of peace is never going to be lower. If you continue fighting, the price of peace is going to be higher in the future. And I thought this was such a clever and important way to state it. And it's Quark that says it. Quark's not fighting. Like he's just doing his thing on the station. He's not involved with directly with any of the fighting at all. But he's making this very um keen, like objective and true statement about about the price of peace right now and why they have to embrace it. And I think when he said that, that made me think about the treaty. That made me think about both sides of the Federation and the Cardassians and going, okay, I can completely see why, yes, everyone just goes now, yes, there's a price to pay. For sure, there's a price to pay. But it's the price is never going to be lower than it is right now. And
Yeah.
so, yeah.
Always he put it in business terms, right? Because that's what he
Yeah.
knows.
Yeah.
Um, it reminds me too of two rules of act. I don't know the numbers, so
Yeah.
don't take my fan card here, but the specific rules of acquisition numbers. But there's two rules of acquisition that are quoted in other episodes that would apply here, which is war is good for business,
Yeah.
and the next one is peace is good for business. Basically, meaning no matter what, there's business to be had, right? This idea
Yeah.
that there is money to be made during war and there's money to be made during peace. And of course, we know that Quark holds on to the rules acquisition like any good Ferengi would, unless you're Rom or Grand Nagus and wants to rewrite them. But that's a whole nother thing.
Yeah.
Uh, Also, we see this moment of realization and this moment of like a light bulb going off where when the legate leaves and Kira says something to the effect of do you believe him or whatever, and Sisko says, well, he told me everything I needed to know. He told me without telling me, right? He's able to read the legate that the Central Command is arming colonists,
Yeah.
even though that's not what he said. But he read between the lines, right? And you have to with Cardassians. He had to read between the lines, and that Sisko has this epiphany, this realization that Cal was right, that it's the
Yeah.
Cardassians doing it. It wasn't Ducat. It wasn't maybe what they thought it was as far as the Cardassians, but Sisko realizes, yep, Cardassians are doing it. And in this case, to me, this is the deep state of the Cardassian government doing this, right? Is they're arming the colonists to start something with the Cardassians to eventually kick off a war and break, and that makes it look like Federation citizens are breaking the peace treaty, which then gives them the right to retaliate and respond, and the peace treaty goes up in smoke.
Yeah,
So a
I
lot of
agree.
complexity here, a lot of complexity with the politics of everything, with the deceptiveness of everything, and the constant multiple layers. I mean, and Cardassians as a whole are they're very complex. I mean, uh, Garrick is a prime example of the
Hmm.
complexity of Cardassians, right? So
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Most very, very true.
yeah,
Very, very true.
yeah.
Ah,
But happens. Cisco leaves on the Rio Grande to rescue Ducat, and he takes Dr. Bashir and Odo with him. And Kira's like, Cisco, you really should leave Ducat at the Maquis. And her thought is, oh, he'll be getting exactly what he deserves.
yeah. Yeah.
And Cisco, well, I love Cisco's line where he says something to the effect of, well, if the Central Command wants him dead, that's reason enough for us to want him alive. And I think part of that is it's the idea that okay, if we keep Ducat alive, there's a deep state piece here that maybe they can help expose the Cardassians
Yeah.
on and the deep state of what's going on in Central Command as the reason why all this happened and expose their deceit. And
Yeah.
I think that's really what Cisco's getting after.
It was. This is a very, very clever plan, like
Hmm.
with Cisco to do. So they're able to find out, like deduce like where Ducat was taken. They had
Yeah.
to. There's a few different M class like planets or meteors that it could be, and so they're able to get there and then beam down, and then rescue Ducat. But with these glimpses that we get to see, like Ducat under interrogation by the Maquis, were great because yeah, there the Maquis interrogation was definitely ineffective,
Yeah.
and
Very poor.
very poor. And Seconda's like, she's trying to do the the
Yeah.
mind with, and it was not working. And Ducat's like, "Oh, you having problems? Not able to connect with my mind? It's just I've got really high mental discipline,
Yeah.
And she's like, "I'm tired. I got to try this again." So I like those a lot.
I must say, I watching this episode, I think maybe I realized maybe my wife is Cardassian because I've tried the Vulcan mind meld on her. It doesn't work either. So I think her mental discipline as a Cardassian in disguise as a human has shown through.
Ah,
I
yes.
think she is able to overcome the interrogation tactics that I attempted to do the Maquis style Vulcan mind meld. It didn't work, Chris. It just
Didn't
didn't
work.
work. No, it didn't work. So that's out. That option's out.
Yeah, I can. Yep, yep. I can see that.
Have you tried that yet?
Our wives are both Cardassians, Zach.
I, I
That is what is it?
I
Yeah.
think it could be, Chris.
Yeah.
Remember there's an episode where they try to convince Kira that she's a Cardassian, but she's
Yeah.
really not. They're trying to convince us that they're human, and they have convinced us they're human. But I think that they've got some type of Cardassian anti-interrogation mental
Like
discipline
mental
techniques at
discipline.
work. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. And if,
Yeah.
between the two of us, I feel like you would appreciate the most my attempt to do a Vulcan mind meld, but it failed.
Yeah.
So I would be surprised if you haven't attempted that yet.
Yeah. Tried.
Yeah,
Oh
tried and
well.
failed. So we're both failed then.
Failed.
Okay.
Both failed.
All right.
Both failed. Both failed. Yeah. So we're able to Cisco is able to rescue Ducat. And so that was good. And then bring him back to the station DS9, and that's where they make a deal essentially. I like that. I mean, Ducat's back. He's back safely on DS9. He's enjoying his meal, and you see Cisco come into his quarters and saying, "Hey, I just wanted to see how you're doing." And Ducat's like, "Yeah, I feel like after I've had like a hard day, a good meal like helps me."
Yeah. Can I go back for one
Yeah,
second, Chris, to
of course.
the line where Ducat's the Maquis are saying, the Bachnor's destruction is, proof that they can continue to fight and everything. And Ducat's just like, yeah, okay, whatever. And I love how Ducat says that anybody can destroy a ship, but to look their enemy in the eye, knowing you'll remember his face the rest of your life. And this idea of interrogation versus just blowing a ship up. And I thought that, and he doesn't think that the Maquis can handle that, right? They don't have the gumption to be able to do that. So I like that idea. This uh kind of point that he's making from the perspective of the Cardassians, right? This idea of interrogating somebody to their face versus, yeah, you just blew up a ship. You don't have to look those people in the eye, right? You just blow them up. But to actually interrogate them means you have to look them in the face, and you'll then remember them the rest of your life. Very, very different take. The fact that the Maquis are very kind of amateur in this whole, you know, quote unquote terrorist kind of mentality and attacking and doing all this stuff. And he's basically, kind of parading again once again, parading around like, us Cardassians, we have all this experience and we know how to really do it. You guys couldn't handle it. So I found that very fascinating.
That's a great point. It's that reminded me of Captain Picard's captivity
Yeah.
with with the Cardassian, his Cardassian captor, and how they,
Ah,
you
yes.
know,
The Four Lights
the
episode.
Four Lights episode.
Yeah.
Very much so. Like, because you're right that Ducat is boasting about like how Cardassians can interrogate.
Yeah,
Like,
their methods, right?
yeah,
Yeah.
like our methods are greater. Just, why don't you let us interrogate? We'll be fine. And he reprimanded that other Cardassian in part one because Samuels died at the end.
Hmm.
Their captive. He's like, yeah, we would never let our our captive die because then you
Oh,
lose
yeah.
we lose the advantage, right? And so,
True.
yeah, yeah, that was a great point.
Yeah. So this is the scene where you mentioned where Ducat's enjoying his meal. This is the scene I was thinking of about
Yeah,
him talking about the criminal justice system on Cardassia, and the fact that Cardassians don't make mistakes, and that the Federation, the balancing the Federation code of justice versus the Cardassian, criminal. I don't want to even say the word
yeah,
justice because I wouldn't say it's justice. They already know. Everybody's always guilty, and they just do the trial for show, and the people get what they want, right?
yeah,
This idea of like Marxism and communism in that regard. But Ducat, this scene, Ducat seems very, very willing to help Cisco. And here's what I think. Knowing Ducat the way that we do, I think Ducat sees this as an opportunity for himself because it's all Ducat is always motivated by his own personal interests.
hmm
Never he will say one thing to your face about how I care, blah blah blah. No, no, no. There's always a catch. There's always a personal interest with him in him furthering himself or his reputation or whatever. And I think Ducat wants to help Cisco in this case, not because it's the right thing to do, but because he thinks maybe by exposing some of the people in Central Command or some of this stuff going on, that it might help him win back, or repair that relationship and get him kind of back on track with his career. It's always that motivation for Ducat.
yeah, yeah, absolutely right about that. And they make that deal, right? So Cisco says essentially deal like,
Yeah.
hey, you uh, help with the Maquis, I'll help you like expose what's going on with Central Command. So
Yeah.
and that's essentially the team up. And they
Yeah.
do it. Yeah.
It's a weird team up. I mean, the weirdest team up is always Kira and Ducat, and there's a couple episodes where that happens. In particular, the one where they're trying to find Zial, and he's motivated because he wants to find her and kill her so it doesn't ruin his family, and she's trying to find her before Ducat gets to her so he can't kill her. And anyways, yeah. So that's
Yeah.
that's very interesting. But the next day we then go to ops, and that's where Odo has gotten this long list of weapons that Sakona had bought from Quark. So Quark's in a little bit of heated problem now because now there's a list that he found that Quark helped her obtain.
And Quark says, he didn't give them to her directly.
Yeah.
He was just facilitating the arrangement, like with the what's the name of the Zeppelites,
Yeah.
I think. So
Yeah, the
it,
Zeppelite free trader. Yeah, that
yeah,
alien
yeah,
who, when they catch his ship, he's all like, "Oh, well, I don't know what you're talking about." He's all like, "Oh, yeah, it's very like kind of quirky, weird guy." Actually, kind of a funny scene. His
yeah.
responses are hysterical. Like, "Oh, it's kind of like he's being caught with his pants down in the light, and he's like, "Oh, I didn't do anything," like very just trying to be completely innocent, and they know he's not.
They know he's not. I think th this is the one where Ducat says, "Hey, it's Ducat," and like, "Hey, I'm gonna fire on you. I'm giving you a 15-second countdown," and he's like, "No,
Yeah.
stop counting,
Yeah,
stop
yeah.
counting."
The whole scene is actually quite funny. It's the little bit of humor they inject into it's actually pretty well timed.
Yeah.
Um, but I find that really cool about this episode, the two-part episode, and of course many others in DS9's. One of the things I think that DS9 does so well is the layered story arcs, right? Like you mentioned earlier about how like, well, there's this going on, there's this going on, and how they're able to put things together like that and layer all of these different story arcs, whether it's Sakona and Quark and everything going on there, and it's Ducat and Cisco over here, and it's Cisco and Cal over here, and then you have Cisco and Nachea. I mean, there's just all these little things that they're putting into one episode, or in this
Hmm.
case, a two-part episode, and they're layering it and layering it and layering it, and it's just another valid point, another check mark for DS9 as to what makes the writing on this show so dang good that
Hmm.
they're able to do this. And then of course you have the continuous story arcs with a lot of the characters and the character development that goes on throughout the series. With that, I I don't know if there's another character that has a better story arc than Nog. I mean, Nog really has his his story arc is just maybe the best in Star Trek. Just from where he becomes this little troublemaker child on the promenade, little Ferengi child, all the way to being a Starfleet officer and losing his leg and PTSD, and yeah, his arc is just
Hmm.
incredible. But I digress. I apologize.
Hmm.
Um, so yeah, you are right. This is where Ducat, I think, pretty much forces the alien to lower his ships, and they're able to, I think, detain him and the cargo that he has.
Yeah. Yeah. And then I think later in this episode, we have the scene that I really liked where Cisco visits the council meeting on the colony. And so they're having
Oh,
a meeting and they're saying, "Hey, we'll be done with this meeting in a few minutes and then we can talk to you." And he's Cisco's like carrying a bunch of stuff. I see this phaser on him. He's got this bag and he's like, "Well, no, I need to like tell you guys that, hey, I'm gonna even if some of you may be Maquis or you may know people that are Maquis, and if you guys go forth with attacking the supply depot, I'm going to stop you. I'm going to be in your way. You have to get through me." And I thought that was a really cool scene where he drops down and he kind of tells them this is what's going to happen. And and then I think Hudson appears in that scene later on, um, and Cisco has his uniform and says, "Hey," and he puts it on the table. "I have your uniform. It's ready for you to come back. You just come back." And then
that
Hudson,
was a
like,
powerful
it
scene.
was a powerful scene. I mean, you see his no, Hudson says, "I'm not coming back."
Yeah, he's
And
he's too far gone. He
he's too
he
far
he
gone.
realizes what's at stake, right? He realizes what the Federation has done or lack thereof, and it's not working for him.
Yeah. And then he destroys the uniform right there. He does a
Yeah,
phaser to it and then it's gone.
yeah.
Yeah.
That is a really powerful moment as well because that is the physical representation of his decision,
Hmm.
right, to do that.
Hmm.
Um,
Yeah.
and yeah, I found that really powerful. And so then we get this scene right at the end of the episode where, as you kind of mentioned earlier, you get the runabouts, the three runabouts, the Rio Grande, the Mekong, and the Orinoco. I don't
Or
remember if I say that
yeah.
right. And they're arriving at the Maquis, or they're waiting for the Maquis to arrive at the depot, and you can tell Cal and Cisco don't want to fight. I mean, they're
Yeah.
good buddies. They don't want to go out like this. In fact, I think Cal even says something to the effect of, I don't want, we shouldn't be doing this, or it's
Yeah. This
You're
doesn't
making
feel
it.
right.
It doesn't.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's what it is. It doesn't feel right. Two friends shooting at each other. And Ducat is just beside himself. He's like, you and you're so he didn't say this, but I know what he's saying is the same thing. Like you're soft, right?
Hmm.
You're too caught up in whatever the word he uses, something that affect like memories, right, or whatever in the
Sentimental,
past.
maybe. Sentimental.
Sentimental,
Yeah.
yes,
Yeah.
sentiment. That's what it is. You're too caught up in your sentiment or something like that. So it doesn't matter what. I mean, Cisco disables their weapons so they can't shoot back, but yet Cisco and Ducat's engines have been disabled, so they can't go to warp. So they're kind of at odds. Ducat wants him to end it. Cisco can't do it, and like you said earlier, Cisco lets him go.
Yeah.
He said, "I'm not gonna." I think he even said something effective. I'm not gonna kill someone for trying to defend their home.
Yeah.
And of course, that Ducat's disappointed by that. But I mean, oh well. I don't think Cisco cares if Ducat's disappointed.
Yeah, I
I
think
really don't.
Cisco said, "Well, I'm not going to lose sleep over your
Yeah,
disappointment."
yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. Yes, exactly. So
Yeah.
that final scene though in the episode where Cisco, is having that, confidential kind of discussion with Kira
Hmm.
after Kira has congratulated him from Starfleet, saying, he's getting the credit for preventing the war and everything. And Cisco's like, yeah, did I really prevent a war? Or am I just delaying the inevitableness of this? Because Cal's still out there, the Maquis are still out there. They still have a beef with the Cardassians. Did he really prevent it, or is it just the can being kicked down the road a little bit, right? And I think
Yeah.
that's a valid point by Cisco.
Yeah.
I really do. I think that's he definitely a valid point. Um, so out of this two-part episode, Chris, let's talk about this for a minute because I think this is kind of the importance and the key from this two-parter. So our Starfleet's finest with a question mark spotlight series highlighting Lieutenant Commander Cal Hudson in this episode. What do you think of him? Is he one of Starfleet's finest, or does he go along the way of Admiral Pressman?
You know, I don't think he goes along the way of Admiral Pressman at all because Admiral Pressman was all about Admiral Pressman is such a narcissist. He's all about himself, right? And
Yeah.
so in this particular cause, like Commander Hudson is wanting to help people that, for all intensive purposes, have been abandoned by their federation, or you could put it maybe in terms of like they've been abandoned by their country.
Mm,
You can maybe put it that way, right? So I have a hard time thinking about like I actually have a hard time saying that he's in the wrong.
mm.
I'm not necessarily saying that he's in the right either. Like I'm holding these two truths, right? That both Cisco is right and potentially like Calvin is right too.
Are you a Maquis sympathizer, Chris?
It's just like, because we dance around these truths that Cardassia was actually smuggling weapons. Just like in the episode The Wounded, where Captain Maxwell actually knows the truth and that, there was
Good
some
point.
they were Cardassian was violating the treaty in these terms. But
Yes.
so that is happening, right? So like Captain Maxwell and Cal are both right. But Captain Picard and Cisco also have this perspective where they're both right because they know if if the if the treaty on a macro level isn't held, then there's just going to be this terrible war for the quadrant. So on this, who knows like what would happen or if history would become different, but you could think of these examples in our own like world history where um where people might have been abandoned by their nations and they've got to fight and fend for themselves.
Yeah.
And like Kira says, well, they have a right to defend themselves. And so you could look at people like these and from a framework of um they're a hero from one perspective. And then you can look at them from a perspective like from the Federation's perspective or a macro perspective of like going, man, they're just causing trouble, man.
They're
Like,
hotheads,
they're
as Shan
hotheads.
said. Yeah.
Yeah, they're hotheads or they're terrorist sympathizers. So I have a very, very hard time in my mind going like I can't necessarily disqualify him as being a fine like individual or an individual that is wanting to do the most honorable thing because Captain Picard has certainly been on that spectrum where like with his engagement with the Baku, he's like totally against Starfleet like orders there. It's like, no, no way, I'm not going to do that.
Yeah.
Um, and I find myself thinking if the roles were reversed for Sisko and Hudson, if Hudson had been assigned to Deep Space Nine and Sisko had been assigned
Mm.
to the colonists, how would that have affected Sisko? Would he, change his mind and then become, a sympathizer with the colonists?
See, I don't think maybe he would, but I don't think
Hmm.
Cisco would abandon the uniform
Yeah,
like Cal did.
understand.
But I
Yeah,
do think Cisco would fight wholeheartedly for the Maquis.
yeah.
Like as far as defending their right to do that. But I don't think Cisco would do it at the expense of abandoning the uniform the way
Ah,
Cal did.
gotcha. It makes sense. It makes sense. And then I find myself thinking a lot about Quark's statement about peace and going, the price of peace will never be as low as it is now.
Mm,
And then going, I start thinking about the word price and going, there's the payment for peace. And then going, the way we paid for peace was by abandoning good men like Maxwell, like Hudson, to these circumstances where they were good men, but these circumstances, they were trying to do the good thing according to how they were educated, according to how they were trained, but you abandoned them. And that
yeah.
was the price. And then they happen to be on that side of it. Picard and Sisko are on one side, and then you have these other individuals that by just almost by the assignments that they had, by Maxwell's assignments to be on the front lines against the Cardassians in the war, by Hudson's assignment to be like, okay, he's in charge of helping the colonists now, they're almost sacrificed, and that's the price. So I find myself going, I can't, I can't find myself thinking that they're on the wrong side of anything, that they're just on,
Is there a wrong side in this
all
case?
right, just they're they're on the side of that was the price to be paid,
Right.
and it was so unfortunate for them. So that's where I find myself going, like thinking of the context of Starfleet's finest, like can't like disqualify them for being like fine and dutiful people
Mm.
because they actually unveiled the truth about what the Cardassians were doing. Um, so, yeah, so this is just such an excellent like episode with all of these kind of layers, isn't it?
Yeah.
So those are some thoughts on that I've got, my friend. Like, I'm curious what you're thinking too.
So yeah, you made some really great points,
Uh,
and that got me my thinking going even more. Uh, I would say if you were holding me down saying you got to pick, is Lieutenant Commander Cal Hudson one of Starfleet's finest, or isn't he? I'm going to say that, and I'll explain why.
hmm
I'm going to say that he's not one of
hmm
Starfleet's finest, and here's why. he does abandon the uniform
Hmm.
for a cause. I'm agnostic to the cause in the sense of how I determine whether or not he's one of Starfleet's finest, right? The cause to me doesn't necessarily matter. It does, but for the purposes of this, it's not about the cause per se. It's about the decision making that led him up to defending this cause. Now, that being said, I don't think he's not even in the same universe as Admiral Pressman.
Hmm.
Um, but you made a really good point. You bring in Captain Maxwell and you look at Cal and you think, okay, these were good men. They really were good men.
Hmm.
And they believe that what they were doing was justified because the Federation wasn't doing its job.
Hmm.
And I also like you bringing up the quark thing, right? Where you say that the price of peace is never going to be any lower than it is now.
Hmm.
And I think that the Federation paid a really high price
Hmm.
because you lost a couple of really good officers. One of which was a Starfleet captain, right?
Hmm.
Who Captain
Yeah.
Maxwell, who had done a lot of good things. And if O'Brien looked up to Maxwell and really revered him, that tells you that he must have been a really good man, right? O'Brien wouldn't do that to just any old captain.
Yeah.
Um, so would I consider Lieutenant Commander Cal Hudson as one of Starfleet's finest? No, but I also understand why he did what he did
Hmm.
because he was doing what Starfleet failed to do, or
Yeah.
the Federation failed to do.
Yeah.
And I think this two-part episode is more telling and more damning on the Federation
Yeah.
than I think it is on Cal
Yeah. Yeah.
because they were more concerned with the peace treaty than they were about uh, making sure the Cardassians were also following it. I mean, you brought back in Captain Maxwell, which I think was great, and you're 100% right because I didn't think about it like this. Maxwell knew something was up. He knew the Cardassians were doing something. Everybody thought he was crazy. He's a nut job, but he's going off. He was going rogue and everything. And at the end of the episode, it turns out, oh, actually, they found something, and then it ends right. Like they don't really go on. So Maxwell was right, and while Cal didn't necessarily know about the central command supplying the weapons, I don't think that's mentioned. Right? I
Hmm.
don't think they know where the supply's coming from, do they?
He just knows that I think somehow they're getting weapons.
They're
You know
getting
that,
yeah,
yeah,
that's yeah.
he's yeah.
They're getting weapons. They don't know exactly how,
Yeah.
right? And so he doesn't know where they're coming from. But my guess would be if they knew that they were coming from the central command, that they probably things would be different.
Yeah.
And so the Cardassians are shady.
Yeah.
They're shady in the Wounded, and they're shady in the Maquis Part One and Two. And I don't think the Federation. Not only do they not defend their own citizens, but now they have two very accomplished, very well decorated Starfleet officers, and they completely ignore anything they're saying.
Yeah.
So it's like, why have you put these gentlemen in these positions if you're not going to listen to what they have to say?
Yeah.
Aren't you enacting some level of trust when you make it to that certain rank in Starfleet? You have a certain level of trust that's been in you know in yeah in you. They have
Yeah.
a certain level of trust in you. I'm trying to think of the right word, but yeah. So I guess that's my answer.
That
I
was
don't think he's one of
wonderful.
Starfleet's
Yeah.
finest because of the decision making of turning on the uniform and serving. But I understand why he did it. And I don't think that makes him a bad man, a
Yeah.
bad human with morals and principles. Um, yeah.
That was
So
wonderful. Yeah.
okay, I'm gonna kind of hold your feet to the fire a little bit, Chris. Can you say one way or the other whether you think he's either Starfleet's finest or not?
I I don't I don't think I can. I don't think I can because it could easily, let's say turn of events could easily have shifted, right?
Yeah.
And so Cardassian ploys and Cardassian intentions are unveiled,
Hmm.
then potentially, if you had different, maybe you had different leaders in Starfleet and you unveiled um, treachery and deceit from someone you had a treaty with,
Yeah.
and he would be a hero. And you go, oh, okay, we need someone like this, like to, you know, to root out like deceit.
I mean, maybe that's why he gave up the
Yeah,
uniform because he realized it doesn't matter what I do, the Federation's not doesn't
yeah,
care or doesn't,
yeah,
and doesn't the Federation and people like Admiral Nechayev owe it to their Starfleet officers to investigate? I
yeah,
mean, part of it I know goes back to the political thing you mentioned several times, right? With the politics of this are so sensitive that the slightest little thing could potentially ruin the treaty. Well, the Cardassians quietly feeding weapons to the Maquis to fire at other Cardassians in order to restart a war is pretty bad too, right?
yeah, yeah, it is. And I find myself, still thinking about that word price that Quark says, and so I can think about from the perspective of going, well, maybe you could consider him like one of Starfleet's finest, right? Because
Yeah,
he is unveiling a truth, and he's not turning like a blind eye.
yeah,
He actually, in a way, with his assignment with helping the colonists, unveiled like the truth of what was happening there
yeah.
between the Cardassians and the colonists.
I agree. I think this will probably Cal Hudson, Lieutenant Commander Cal Hudson, will probably be maybe the most complex figure that we look at in this whole Spotlight series.
Mm.
I think everything thus far, I would say, has been pretty cut and dry, pretty straightforward as far as like, what we've thought,
Hmm.
whether they're Starfleet's finest or not. This one's this one's complex. It was really, really complex. And I have to look at the list again, but I'm not sure that there's another person on the list that I think would be to this kind of level of complexity as far as determining whether we think they're, you know, one of the finest or not.
Yeah, and what a wonderful two-part like episodes and like just the
Yeah.
layers of writing that went into this and the ideas that went into it was just fantastic.
Yeah, it was amazing. Really, really great writing. And what a great way to kick off our Deep Space Nine episodes as part of the
Yeah.
Spotlight series, huh? What a great way to jump back to the station and take a look at the show with, many could argue, and I would argue for sure, the greatest writing in the franchise. And so doesn't mean other shows don't have great writing; they do. But yeah, what a great way to kick it off. And awesome talking about DS9 again, continuing our Spotlight series. And for those of you watching or listening all over the globe and the interwebs, uh, Star Trek Strange New Worlds season 4 is coming out in less than a month. And I cannot wait, Chris, for us to maybe take a pause on the Spotlight series and dive into season 4, brand new Star Trek content, and talk about these amazing characters that we love.
Yeah, that's going to be amazing going back into Strange New Worlds.
Yeah,
Looking forward to that so much. So,
me too.
yeah,
Me too.
yeah,
There's been some really powerful, really great episodes. There's been a few clunkers, but every show has that. And I'm looking forward to seeing what season 4 has to offer us. We've got already at least one guest lined up during our Strange New Worlds run that we're looking forward to having back on with us again, a recurring guest, which will be awesome, and maybe some more down the road. So yeah, we looking forward to that, Chris, and looking forward to continuing some more episodes with you soon.
likewise, my friend. It's going to be wonderful.
Yes,
Wonderful.
yes, for sure. So, thank you everybody again, as always, so much for watching and listening to us here at the Random Redshirt Podcast. Be sure to go on to Facebook, Instagram, Threads, as I said before, and YouTube. Subscribe on there, like, comment, leave all that social media jazz stuff that They all do these days. We very much appreciate that. And we'll be back with another episode soon. We're working, continuing to work on some more guests upcoming and getting those scheduled. Some awesome ones from Star Trek and the Karate Kid franchise, and so much more. So it'll be a blast. And I'm not sure what episode we're doing next, but we will announce that as soon as we figure that out
Mhm.
and get our schedules lined up. And we look forward to more right here on the Random Redshirt podcast. Take care, everybody.